Static factory method versus constructor. So the traditional way for a class to allow a user or a client to obtain object is to provide a public constructor to it. But Joshua Bloch in his book Effective Java says that there is another technique that should be part of every programmer's toolkit, and that is static factory method. A class can provide a public static factory method, which is simply a static method that returns an object of the class. So how we can actually do it? Let's see. Practically, this idea is very simple. It says that instead of providing a constructor of this class, use a static method. So let's say I'll take a public static method with the name which will return the object of this class. So its return type should be the name of the class, and I'll call this method with a more user-friendly name, let's say getObject. And what I'll do, I'll simply write return new static factory method object. So whenever I'll call this method, I'll get an object. What's the use of the object? We use the object to call the methods of the class. Let's say I have a method here and I'm simply printing a line from inside this method. Now to call this sum method function either from the main or from the subclass, you need not the object. You need not to call the object of the class check static factory method. You can simply call it a static method. And as we know, static methods are referenced by with the help of the class name. So I'll simply write the name of the class and then I'll call the method, and through this method I can call the function of the class or whatever is there inside the class, just like an object. So this is the whole idea of providing a static factory method instead of constructor so that you can call it without creating the object of the class, without invoking the object of the class or any constructor of the class. So as of now, it looks very simple and not so much useful. But when we do inheritance, when we have a client to which we expose this method, then it becomes useful and a good practice to follow. So, what are the advantages of doing this? The one advantage is that, unlike constructor, the static factory methods have names. So, as you can see, I have provided a name get object, which is more user friendly instead of just providing the constructor. The second advantage is, unlike constructors, they are not required to create a new object each time they are invoked. So we have seen that without creating the object of the class check static factory method, we have called the function of the class. Unlike constructors, they can return an object of any subtype of their return type. So that is in the case of inheritance. If you can return the object of this class, then you can return the object of any subtype of this class as well. That you will see while doing the inheritance. The class of the returned object can vary from call to call as function of the input parameters, and the class of the returned object need not exist when the class containing the method is returned. So these are some common advantages of using the static factory method. But there are certain limitations as well. And the main limitation is that if you have only the static factory method, then your class cannot be subclassed. Because for a class to be subclassed, its constructor should either be public or protected. And when you don't have a constructor which is public or protected, then your class cannot be subclassed. That is one limitation, the first limitation. The second limitation is that static factory method are hard for programmers to find. I mean, you will have to explicitly tell that these are the methods to get the object of the class. Otherwise, how the programmer would know? Because they are by traditionally wired to get the object through the constructors of the classes. So, static factories and constructors also share a common limitation, and that they do not scale well to large numbers of optional parameters. So, when we have overloading kind of thing, then the both share the same limitation. If you have large number of optional parameters, that is where the whole concept get kind of limited in terms of performance. So, what's the solution of doing that? Use a builder pattern. So, what's the builder pattern is all about? We'll discuss that in the next part.